Welcome to the show, man.
Kevin, I'm happy to be here, man. Thanks for bringing me on.
Oh man, definitely glad to have you here, man. If you don't mind, can you give the audience a little bit about your background?
Sure. So, I think for the intents and purposes of our show today, I'm a full desk recruiter, recruiting manager for a third party agency or an executive search firm. I specialize kind of in two different fields, finance and accounting, which I lump into one, and then technology. I've got a vast experience in HR, customer service, and general administration as well. But as of the last 2 years, those have been kind of my main focus.
Absolutely. So yeah, to kind of get started, we had a conversation earlier where you mentioned there's actually different kind of recruiters. There's internal recruiters, and there's the kind of recruiting that you do. Do you mind giving that distinction to the audience?
Sure. And so just like, many other industries, there's kind of levels, to some of these roles. There are kind of like junior roles or maybe not quite recruiters that assist the recruiting process or sourcers that maybe are just interacting with talent, so to speak. So it is important to kind of know the difference of these. But an agency recruiter or a third party recruiter like myself, we're driven by the requisition, by the open position. That's ultimately what is making us reach out to a candidate. And so that all starts with a client telling us that they have typically an urgent role that needs to be filled. Um, Versus an internal recruiter who works for a single organization. They have built typically probably a stronger relationship with their hiring managers. They work with them on a daily basis, typically have a higher rec load, and I would say also typically are maybe able to invest in people a little bit more. There's probably different schools of thought on that, but basically it's kind of turn and burn, quick, fast pace in the agency world, whereas the internal recruiting might be a slightly slower process, if that makes sense. And again, that's generally speaking. I'm sure that there are many schools of thought on that, but from my personal experiences, those are the differences there.
So like once you get the requirements from the hiring manager, how does it like how does the process go when you start looking for the candidates?
Sure. Without getting too much into the weeds there, basically what will happen is we sit down with a client and we have a really in-depth conversation about the whole situation, about what's happening. It doesn't just start with, hey, this position is just opened. For example, like in finance, if you're looking for an accounting manager, more than likely that is not a net new position. That's a position that's a backfill. What happened? How long was that person in the role for? Um, I'm looking kind of for like a profile of a successful candidate that was there previously. That in-depth conversation with the hiring manager is, what do you need versus what do you want? Right? We're gonna everyone has kind of got like a shape in their mind of what they're looking for. Um, but if you don't sit down and kind of talk through some of these things out loud, you can miss out on a really great candidate for a role that again has a sense of urgency or that needs to be filled. So we'll just have a candid conversation, try to for candidates. During that time where the intake calls, we call it, I am candidate. I'm asking the questions that I know that my candidates are going to ask me. So that's going to be benefits, salary. Um, absolutely everything that I can. And sometimes I don't get all the information. Sometimes I'm talking to a candidate and they have a question that is super good that I'm like, oh, I need to go back and I need to get that. But basically, we have a conversation around the hard requirements versus the hard suggested requirements, and then from there we hit the ground running.
Absolutely. So when you start searching for the employees that the candidates that you're going to hire, what is your process there?
Sure. So again, in talking to the hiring manager, it's also important to know as the recruiter, I'm not totally technical myself, right? I don't have a computer science degree. I don't have a finance degree. Majority of the information that I get is going to come from my candidates. But in discussing this information and getting an in-depth view from the hiring manager, I know, hey, let's say we're talking to a software or we're talking about a software engineering position. What front end technologies are you using? What are you guys using for a database? How frequently are you guys running sprints? Information like that, so I can find idea the closest shape of that candidate that you can find. But I really rely on the information that the hiring manager gives me, assuming that they can give me enough information, and then the information that I get from the candidate. Not every candidate that I connect with, I'm finding a position for. And then again, just to kind of clear up that perception, I'm not just looking for candidates kind of willy nilly. It should be a targeted search. The reason that I mentioned that I specialize in these two areas is because I am focused, and typically recruiters are. Um, you know, I say that to say that we don't just look for every single job that's under the sun. Some agencies do that, but majority of us are focused. And I think that that's kind of where folks are like, man, I'm reaching out to a ton of recruiters, but they're not really helping me out. That could because you might be reaching out to the wrong sort of recruiter, or maybe someone in the incorrect industry. Networking always helps, of course. There's a way to kind of do like a general networking, but in any case, to answer your question, I'm really relying on the information that I'm going to get from that hiring manager, the job description, of course, and then other market information that I get from candidates on what I really should be looking for. I'll talk to maybe, like, let's say I am looking for a software engineer role, and I'm having a hard time finding that particular skill set. I might look for a software engineering manager, or maybe a tech lead with the same sort of skill set that I can talk to and say, "Hey, Kevin, I'm looking for a junior software engineer. I see that you're a senior software engineer. I think this role is a little bit too junior for your experience. Do you happen to know anyone in the area? Is there anyone that you've worked with in your past that maybe fits his skill set?" So I'm not always trying to sell people a job. Sometimes I'm just trying to get some information, and I think that you might be able to share that information if you're willing to have that conversation with me. And that's a conversation that could potentially, change someone's life, that could get someone a position.
Absolutely. How do the resumes get to you? Like, are you going through LinkedIn, typing in keywords, or how exactly do they find you?
Typically, the way that I'm getting a resume is someone is sending it to me. There are a number of different programs out there that candidates can upload their information to, which is ultimately going to increase the probability that you're going to be found, right? If you put yourself into a position to be found. So if you're utilizing some of these programs, Indeed, LinkedIn, you can do this. That's going to increase your probability of being found. But typically, I'm talking to a candidate, will generate some interest around the role, and then they'll send me their resume. Even if they're not interested in that role, there may be a similar background that I've hired for in the past, and contingently, right? Hey, if I happen to come across something, they want to know about it. They're passively on the market. Um, they're not searching the job board, so to speak, but they know that Diego's out there flipping stones over, trying to look for the diamond in the rough, so to speak. And if I find that, they want to hear about it. But yeah, typically a resume is something that has been agreed upon for me to receive.
Absolutely. So, when a client reaches out to you on LinkedIn, or not a client, but somebody reaches out to you on LinkedIn and sends you their resume, um, have you noticed, like, is there a proper way to approach you versus, like, I know some people might be rude, or some people might not really know how to talk to a recruiter. I'm just kind of curious if that has an effect on, like, how hard the recruiter might push for a candidate, or
Absolutely, Kevin. Ultimately, I'm in my position for the decision making that I've made in the past, the positive decision making that has seen success. And when a client reaches out to someone like us, I'm their trusted advisor. Again, I am going to ultimately representing that company when searching for the opportunity, and we make decisions kind of very quickly. You know what I mean? We try to make them as objectively as we can. But yeah, if a candidate, there is absolutely a way that I think, if you're looking to network with a recruiter, you're not too sure how to navigate that field, there absolutely is. I think it starts off with a little bit of research. You don't want to just kind of spray and pray, as they say. Not every recruiter is going to be able to help you. Basically, I'm sure every one of them knows someone that they can connect you to, but you want to be targeted in your approach. And so typically any recruiter that is on LinkedIn should have, I've got it listed on my profile, my two industries. But you can always ask. You can always ask. And I don't think that there's anything wrong with saying, with opening up with, hey, I'm on the market. there's kind of a lot of backlash against, saying like, hey, don't reach out to someone on LinkedIn when you only need something. The reality of the matter is sometimes folks get behind the ball in networking. They find themselves in an unforeseen situation that they haven't been networking the last 6 months to a year, and now they're on the job market and they need a job. I don't think that there's necessarily anything wrong with that outreach looking like for a targeted recruiter, right? So like if you see on my profile that I do finance and technology, and you were to reach out as an accountant, like there's a good chance that you and I can have a conversation like, hey, Diego, I've got so many years in accounting. I've got my degree. I've, this many years of experience. I see that you do this. I would love for you to keep me in mind, or I'd love to have a conversation at some point, not being assumptive and saying, what can you do for me? But like, hey, I see that you do this. I have this experience. Hopefully we can connect in the future. Um, I think is probably a good way to, again, it's not assumptive. It's you've done a little bit of research. You're not just reaching out to kind of a random recruiter. Um, but there's nothing wrong again with kind of coming out and saying, hey, I need a little bit of help. But yeah, does that answer your question? Is that useful?
Yeah, yeah, definitely. Yeah, I just want to run a couple of scenarios by you. So imagine that you're a software engineer and you just got laid off from Google.
Mm.
Um, what would your approach be? Like, how would you get in touch with recruiters? Like, what would you do to make sure you're getting these interviews?
Sure. One thing that I will say too, as far as technology is concerned, is there are still absolute, and I mean, I guess this is true in every industry, but names from companies definitely mean something. It doesn't mean everything, but for someone that is probably at like a high profile organization, absolutely be connected with some recruiters. I think you don't need every single one under the sun. You just need a few that are good and that they know what you do and you know what they do, so that when that time comes, that will get to work for you. But let's say you did not maybe have a good network. Maybe you didn't even have a LinkedIn, right? Um, Creating exposure around yourself, getting on LinkedIn alone is a huge step forward. If that's the case that you're in, that you're maybe desperately needing a position, as far as the LinkedIn profile is concerned, posting your resume or having it featured on your profile, basically easily acceptable or accessible for folks who might be searching. And it's not the only way that you're going to be found, but the reality of the matter is that LinkedIn is a huge, huge recruiting tool. You know what I mean? I'm willing to say that the best of the best out there are using it. You know what I mean? Um, Let me see if you were also laid off recently. Um, I would say networking, man, getting on LinkedIn and then also talking about like maybe some of the things that you do on LinkedIn or at Google, some of the things that you've done, some of the things that you find exciting. While LinkedIn is a social media platform, it's different than Facebook and
Mhm.
Instagram. It's not quite like these other ones where you might see a director of FBI talking about some security work that they've done, and then you might also see like a dancing cat video. If you tailor your platform well enough, you're only going to be seeing people that are like-minded people, that are doing the same work that you're doing. And every time that you see a post, it's going to maybe add value to your industry or to your knowledge if you're careful about how you're curating your profile. Um, Oh, okay. So here's another thing too: is if you've recently been laid off, but networking with previous colleagues, maybe people that have left previously. Maybe even these are vendors. Obviously, there's non-competes that you want to be careful with, but the biggest thing that you can do in today's market is network. And even outside of like a recruiting agency, the best way for you to get a job still today is networking. It's like, who do you know? If you happen to know someone at a company, regardless of if you're working with an agency or not, if you went to that same school, I mean, if you know somebody, that is absolutely going to benefit you in a positive way.
Absolutely. I know juniors are really having a hard time finding a job right now. Is there some things that they can do to look more appealing to these companies and recruiters?
Yeah, this is I think the tech market is in like a main focal point right now, but this is true really in any industry. When I graduated school, there were a ton of my colleagues and even myself. I was like, what am I going to do with my degree? I thought that basically people were going to be lining up to offer me a position because I had a degree. That wasn't necessarily the case. The biggest thing in this, I would say this is true really for anyone who is maybe lacking in that enterprise level of experience. You need to generate some sort of experience, something that is going to be applicable to what a hiring manager is looking for. Um, so that might be freelancing. I know that's
Mhm.
a really big one that I've seen a lot of junior developers see success with that. There's a gentleman on LinkedIn, I believe by the name of Ray Morrison, um, who came, I believe he was a boot camp grad, non-traditional, tech background, and works for. He's got an associate programming position, and he leaned heavy on the experience that he had. So for folks who do not maybe have that experience, or if you're junior, you're trying to get into the market right now, the biggest thing that I will tell you is leverage what you have, leverage your experience. No one's going to be too concerned about the school that you came from. They're not going to be too concerned about accomplishments necessarily from a previous industry. This is all about, can you do what I need to hire someone to do? And so I would say to leverage that experience as best as you can. Look for projects. Do not rely solely on your school work to get you that position. A hiring manager needs to know that you are passionate about what you're doing, that you're adding to repositories, that you left school and that you looked for work to showcase to hiring managers. That's the biggest thing. Experience is the biggest thing. Look for it any way that you can.
Absolutely. So we know like resumes are really important. Is one's LinkedIn profile just as important?
Not necessarily. No, I'd say the resume is far, far more important. You know what I mean? Because no one is going to hire you. No one should hire you, I don't think, based on the LinkedIn profile. But the resume, that's a given. You know what I mean? You're not going to have that initial conversation without the resume. You can have that initial conversation without a LinkedIn, so to speak.
Absolutely. So like what are some of the good things you've seen from people's resumes and what are some of the bad things?
Yeah, man. So we do have a resume ready to go here. I don't know, would now be a good time maybe to bring it up, and we can I think that'll be a
Sure.
little bit more organic for us to talk about here. Okay, so I'm gonna share my screen. We've got a resume that has come in from a viewer. And let me see. I'm looking for, here we go. This should
Okay.
say Coder Conversations resume. Yeah,
Here
this
we
is this
go.
is our resume here. Okay. So this is a this is gonna be a candid review here. I'm going to go through here just as if this were a resume that I were screening. Let's just say for a front end engineer, since that's what we've got listed up here, right? So I've got a front end position open. Let's look to see if this is, an individual maybe that I'd want to reach out to, right? But again, that job rec is really going to determine kind of the level of caliber for this candidate, or their level of, success rate for a particular position. Just candidly, I typically do not read summaries. That's not the information that I'm looking for. Tech skills, I'm probably gonna just do a quick scan here as we're going through. I see React, okay, Docker, Git, kind of light on our tech skills, but I like that they're here. They're at the very top. This would be enough to kind of generate some curiosity in my eyes. Okay, like where is he using these at, or where are they using these at? Okay, so front end software developer, engineer, electrical harmony media, 16 to present. This is great. So the main things that I'm looking for are going to be our title and then our longevity. Those are the first two things that I'm looking for. First two things that I'm looking for. And then I'm going to go through some of these bullet points here. Now, I will say that there's kind of a lot of information here. That's not necessarily a bad thing. But let me see, participate active developer code review. Okay. I would say that this should be a given, I think. For someone being here for this long, that they're doing code reviews. Okay. There we go. That's what I want to see. What are you maintaining? How are you doing that? Using WordPress, CMS here. Okay. So just from the high level, what I'm gonna say here is like this is a good shape, so to speak, right?
Mhm.
If as the job seeker, when you are looking at a job description, I'm sure everyone has probably got in their mind what a poor job description looks like, right? It's got like a shape to it, so to speak. Resumes are the same way. This is a good shape. This is perfect. And so what I mean by that is there's not anything that's terribly distracting. Could we add some TLC to maybe to zhuzh it up a bit, so to speak? Sure. But this is a really great format. I'm seeing really everything that I would need to see on here to reach out to this individual. Let me see here. I would like to see maybe, looks like Master of Science in what, though? I'd like to know maybe what they studied here.
Mhm.
Because if that is computer science, my recommendation might be to put that at the top, if that is a Master of Science.
Mhm.
Um, If it isn't, maybe if it is like business administration and this individual is going for another friend in software engineering role, then I think the education is in a good place. Um, let me see. You know, with the amount of information that I see on here, I think that this could probably be written a little bit more efficiently. With what
Mhm.
I'm reading, I don't think that we need quite so many bullet points. Maybe less bullet points that have a little bit more meat to them. Um, let me see. Maybe like how frequently we're iterating code here, right?
Mhm.
Um, and maybe how much we're improving load time, if there's like a percentage on here, you know. So all in all, yeah, if this were like out of five, I'd rate this maybe a three, and I'm
Okay.
calling a three. You know what I'm
Mhm.
saying? 100% I'm going to call it three. Is there some stuff that we could add on here to I'm going to tell you right now, what's making me the most excited is the years of longevity. Like, yeah,
Mhm.
you must have been doing some really good work. If you're through the pandemic here, and you're still at the same location, what sort of work were you doing? Were you working? Were there any direct reports under you? But yeah, this doesn't need to be. We don't need like 10 bullet points under everything here. I really just need 3 to 4 that give me, some really good meat and potatoes in what you're doing. Um, yeah, and I see, okay, and JavaScript on here too. Yeah, this resume reads as a front end software engineer. There's enough on here that I would say that I would absolutely reach out to this individual as a front end developer. This is someone that I would absolutely consider for a front end role. Let's see here, using Bootstrap, React JS, maybe even JavaScript, right? Which
Mhm.
JavaScript should be up here. JavaScript needs to be up in technical skills. Um, WordPress, you could add up here, maybe not necessarily. I will say
Mhm.
that, this is kind of an indicator that they're working with some older technology, right?
Mhm.
Which can go, that can work for you, that can work against you. There are a ton of organizations that maybe are looking for like a niche, um, or they haven't upgraded maybe a legacy system, and they need someone
Mhm.
who's got, good familiarity with maybe some older technologies. Um, but yeah, all in all, this is a great resume. All in all, this is a great resume. It's also important to note, I said maybe like a level 3 out of 5. I don't think that any fives exist, Kevin, if I'm going to be
Mhm.
totally candid with you, because the resume is, it's a living document. This individual, I'm sure maybe just from this week alone, could have some more information that they could add to this resume, some accomplishments that they've completed just this week, right? So like it can always be adjusted, it can always be worked on, and it can always be perfected. The reason that I bring that up, Kevin, is I know sometimes, especially for folks who haven't been out in the job market in a long time, they might be a little concerned about the way that their resume looks so much that they might not send it out, that they might not get it
Mhm.
out there. If someone had sent me this resume and they said, "Hey, do I need to change it?" I would say no. I'd ask them how many jobs that they've applied to, um, and if that number, and then I would ask them how many responses that they've received, and we would look at that number. And if that number is a little disproportionate, right? If they've reached out to way too many people and they haven't gotten enough responses, then I would come back and I'd look at this, and then I might make some tweaks. right? Maybe I would take off some of these bullet points that I feel maybe are a little redundant. Maybe we would bulk up on some of these ones that I feel like are really highlighting some quality information. But if someone were concerned about this resume and they were asking like, "Hey, is this going to generate an interview?" I absolutely think so. I absolutely think so. Now, one thing that I would want to know here, right, is were they doing this at the same time? Were they
Hmm.
doing these? And then if so, like, how much realistically were they doing for each? Was this let me see here. Blah, 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 blah. It's another thing too, like for the title, we could add maybe full-time employee here or FTE. And if this were
Okay.
a contract, in parentheses, maybe we put on contract for anyone who is a contractor out there, or they're wondering like, how do I put my client on my resume, even though I was a contract, maybe through an agency? Put your client on here and then simply put contract in the parentheses. Um, but yeah, so like this would be maybe not necessarily a red flag, but I need to ask like, hey, how are you doing this as a manager and this as a full-time front end software engineer? But people do. I mean, it's not uncommon at all. But that's definitely something that I want to ask. Um, oh, and then maybe if you have like a little statement in between the two, like working maybe 20 hours as the graphic design manager for Shabazz Printing, to kind of alleviate that apprehension as the hiring manager.
Hmm.
What are the
Do you think
questions what you have
do
for
you think
me?
they should have a link to their GitHub or like?
Absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah. Hiring managers definitely check that stuff out. I don't think that I would say that hiring managers check that stuff out for for resumes that are really screaming, um, tech professional, that are really screaming like, "Hey, I want to see their work. What do they have up here?" But yeah, and so also for students, it's a great way for folks to see other things that you've been working on. Absolutely have hyperlinks on your resume.
Yeah, I just want to let the audience know if y'all have any questions, please feel free to ask.
I think. Do you think we should spend some more time on this here? I don't know that there's really too much more to say. Um,
Sure. You want me to send you another one and we could take a look at that one?
Absolutely, man. Yeah, absolutely. No, I don't know that I'll have the time to to remove the contact information on there. So if you want to, as long as they're
Okay.
okay, with them seeing this, I'll
Yeah,
stop
it's
sharing.
fine because the one I'm sending you is one that we did on a previous episode.
Okay.
So I kind of want to just get your opinion on this one. Okay. But yeah, in the meantime, while I look for it, so like what are some of the things that people can do that turn you off from wanting to proceed with their resume?
Asking me to, if you just drop a resume in my inbox and you're like, hey, can you fix this for me? Um, I don't do that. I don't create resumes, and I don't fix resumes for someone that I'm not working with typically. Now, what I'll also say is not every recruiter has like the personal capital to do this. I do a lot of personal investment in people, folks that I absolutely think are going to be um, a professional or a leader in their field. That might just need a little bit of guidance or is looking for a little bit of guidance. That I might not necessarily be able to assist in their career, but with a job search, but absolutely maybe with an interview prep or a resume review. Not everyone can do that, but yeah, if you're just dropping a resume in my inbox and ask me to check it out, that's kind of a red flag. If we're working together, right, I will absolutely make recommendations or referrals to you while we're working together. And the other end of that is, you're a bit of an extension to me when I present you to a hiring manager. Not only do I want to make sure that you're set up for success, but I want to make sure that the client knows that I'm doing my due diligence, working with the candidate, and presenting the best candidate possible, right? That we're making you look as absolutely as good as we can. Um, Let me see. So here's another thing on resumes that I get a lot of questions on. Are should it be one page? Does it need to
Hmm.
be one page? Um, Many different schools of thought on this, and I know actually that there are hiring managers that believe it needs to be one page. In my personal experience, those managers, that belief is farther and fewer in between. I believe that the general consensus, right, is that if you have pertinent information that needs to be on your resume and it bleeds into another page, put it on there. Put it on there. Now, I think you want to be careful about what is bleeding into that second page. If you're going off into, oh, well, it all began in 1989. We want this to be professionally focused and focused on why you are a good candidate for the opportunity. And going back to something else that I said earlier about the summary, about me not really looking at the summary, um, that summary, you're trying to tell me who you are. You're trying to tell me a little bit about yourself. I'm going to find that out. I'm going to find out who Kevin is when we get on the phone. When we talk, I'm going to ask you a little bit about your role, why you like your role. So if you're looking to maybe save some real estate on your resume and you're like, oh, I don't want it to go on to another page. It doesn't need to be 2 pages. Consider getting rid of that summary. And I would say that it's, again, a general consensus from the recruiting community that that isn't a requirement. You don't, or like the objective statement. Just tell me, the magic bullet to the resume, Kevin. If you want to know how you're going to get seen by a recruiter, it is the things that we just talked about: your job title, your longevity, and your experience. I don't need a crazy format. I don't need bright colors. I need the information that I'm looking for in a relatively quick amount of time. And if I don't see that information in a relatively quick amount of time, I'm going to have to push you off to the side until I get to the bottom of my bucket. And if I still don't have the amount of candidates that I'm looking for, maybe I will revisit. If I've got the time, maybe I will revisit. But it is critical for you to have the information that you're trying to leverage and the information that I'm looking for, easily accessible on the resume there.
So for the initial scan, I've heard that people take anywhere between 5 to 15 seconds going through each resume. They're not giving a ton of time to each resume, like initially, like the
Yeah,
first.
I'd say that sounds about right. 5 seconds seems a little low. I'd say anywhere between 15 to 30 seconds, though. 45 seconds, you're kind of getting up there. And the reason that is because we have a high volume of folks that we've got to go through. You know what I mean? You've got to think for, like, let's just say LinkedIn alone. Like, how many people use LinkedIn? It's like, how many programmers are there potentially on LinkedIn? You're going to get a crazy amount of folks. So you've got to be, and I had a former manager. What he used to say was, "Protect your time. Time is money. You got to protect your time." And again, kind of going back to that personal investment piece, I'm very careful about who all I'm investing my time in, because some of those folks, they don't see the value in what I'm trying to provide. Um, and then also I've got responsibilities to both my candidate and my client that I've got to adhere to as well. You know, um, that's probably the biggest thing I think that recruiters might have a rub with candidates is candidates might not always see the value in our time. You know,
Mhm.
and then to the same effect, I think that recruiters sometimes get in that mentality. They don't always see the value of the candidate's time. Both are equally important. No one is more important than the other. And I think that contention happens when you know one of those is viewing maybe their time a little bit more beneficial than the others.
Absolutely. So on that initial scan, like what is the first, second, and third thing you're looking at? Like how does your eye move down the document?
Yeah. Without like a resume in front of me, like the general shape that's in my head, obviously the contact information. Okay, so the first thing that I'm going to see is like the general shape, like the general outline, just like we were talking about earlier. As a job seeker, a poor job description, you know what that shape looks like in your head. It's got like a format to a form. So the first thing that my brain is intaking, right, are like the aesthetics of this resume, the color and the format. It is the lowest part. That's like the least important part that my brain is going to go to. The next is going to be the title, the longevity, and then everything under that. Right. I'm looking for a particular title. And maybe even not necessarily the title that I'm looking for, but a title that is going to be similar enough that's going to be exposed to the work that I've done. Okay. Um, so so title, the amount of time that you were doing that, okay, and then everything that's listed under there. And yeah, I had to check those boxes. I'm really not checking any other boxes. It's like, objectively, do you have the information that I need to put you in front of my hiring manager? Um, and you know what? Maybe there's enough information on there that's going to make me say, maybe they've got enough that the hiring manager can train. Let me call them. Let me find out, hey, this is what I'm looking for. Um, the reason I say it that way because, I'm not trying to embellish anything. Recruiters are not magic bullets. We're not, we can't just, wave a magic wand and then, talking about the boot campers earlier, we're not going to just get you a job if you don't have any experience. Um, I can only work with what I've got, and on both ends. On the job side, I'm not going to embellish the job at all. I should not embellish the job at all. I should be able to give it to you transparently. And then similarly, on the client side, I'm not going to embellish my candidate at all, right? Because I'm going to be setting up poor expectations or just uneven expectations. It does benefit me to let the client know, hey, we're looking for A, B, and C. They've got A and B, and they're really hungry to learn C. Okay. They don't have enterprise level of experience with that third item, but this is the exposure that they got while they were in school, right? Again, it's all just leverage. Whatever we do have, that's what we're going to leverage. If we don't have it, we're not going to leverage that. Transparency. That's another thing that you should be looking for in a recruiter, is transparency.
Absolutely. So I just sent you the other resume. Did you want to pull that up?
Yeah, let me get it up here.
Sure.
You sent it through LinkedIn, or where'd you send it to?
Yeah, LinkedIn. Yep.
I got you. Here we go. Okay. Give me just a moment. I'll pull.
No, okay.
And okay, maybe we need to close some of these out too. Or no, I guess I can. Let me do another window. There we go. Okay. Okay. So, just like I was saying, first thing that's coming to mind is the shape here. I don't care for this format all too much, but that's okay. That's okay. I'm going to leave that bias at the door, and I'm going to look for the objective information next. Okay, so JavaScript. Okay, so probably a front end developer here. Let me just take a quick look. We don't explicitly say that. Okay. Coinbase president, senior front end engineer. You definitely want some more information under here. This is some decent longevity too, as a senior engineer. Maybe talking a little bit about the financial systems, or just, if I'm reading this, it doesn't seem all too exciting. You know what I mean? Like, this resume, if this person is very excited about what they're doing, this is going to jump out to me here. Let me see. Instead of heavy, I would like a quantifiable number here. How frequently are you working with APIs? How frequently are you building these? Are you customizing them? So yeah, I'm going to say there's enough information here for me to want to reach out to this person. One, I know these names. Oh, but here's another thing too, though. Like, are they still presently here?
Mm-hmm.
You know what I'm saying? Which one is present? So that's a red flag. And if I'm moving quick, that could easily be something that's going to make me say, you know what? I'm sorry. Like, I need to find someone who's got their resume dates correct. Like, let me just keep moving. Me personally, I would still call this individual because I like some of the information that I'm seeing. And I see a ton of opportunity for us to build on to basically, again, to zhuzh this resume up. This one doesn't need to be one page. This is a senior engineer at Coinbase. This is a senior engineer at Facebook, at Bloomberg. This can be a minimum, this could be at least 2 pages,
Mm-hmm.
and maybe even a little bit more. But I need way more information on on what you're doing. You know, you're at Facebook for more than likely, it looks like just a little over a year and a half. And I've got, you know, two sentences about what you did while you were there as a front end developer. You know, um, whose work were you checking? You know, again, like how frequent were you guys running sprints? Um, I mean, there's just, you know, no information here. But if this were the resume that came into my inbox, and let's say someone had referred this individual to me, like, hey, Diego, so and so told me to reach out to you. I'm a front end developer. Can we connect? Do you have anything available for me? You know, this is a good skeleton for us to
Mhm.
add some meat to. But again, yeah, the between the two formats of the resumes that we just looked at, let me see if I can pull up that other one. I much prefer, while this one again also is a bit, you know, bland, so to speak. This is little bit more fluid.
Okay, let me see. So between the two, you would say the first one has a more preferable format. You don't really like the column style of the second one.
That's correct, and that's just me personally. And again, you know, I'm like it's you know, this format's a little bit weird in this window that I'm in like Google like PDF viewer. When if I were to open this, I'm sure in a Word it might look a little bit different. But see, that's another reason why I don't really like the format is like the Word document. Um, oh, whoops, let me see here. This is gonna come up, you know, like this isn't gonna the formatting of this is not gonna get too messed up in any ATS. Like it just about every ATS, you should be able to upload this format, whereas this one here might not the ATS might not love, you know. But again, just like I said, hey, that's the first thing that I'm noticing. It isn't pleasing to the eye immediately,
Mhm.
but this has got the amount of information on here that I need to reach out to this person and talk to. You know, like just looking at the resume alone, I cannot make a submittal on this individual, right? Um,
Mhm.
and a lot of times people will kind of like, when I'm reaching out to people, hey, that's on my resume. Isn't that listed on my resume? What you just asked me? Like, hey, I know that this is listed on your resume. If you can tell me though, in your own words, what you were doing, like it's going to help me understand a little bit better when I'm talking to the hiring manager. Let me hear the excitement in your voice when you're telling me about the work that you did. You know what I mean? But you know, all in all, yeah, I'd list this two. I would list this also as a three. You know, for all intents and purposes of recruit, maybe a two just because of format. But again, like that, I'm going to call it a
Mhm.
three because the formatting is not the most important. It's definitely something that I notice. You know, the hiring manager might even call it out like, "Oh, I don't like the format." That's okay, hiring
Mhm.
manager. Let me tell you why this resume ended up in front of you today. And you know, ultimately, that's another really great reason to work with the recruiter is that hiring managers do have those biases. Like, oh, I don't want to look at this resume. It's unappealing. It's unappealing to the eye. Well, hold on there, Mr. Hiring Manager, Mr. and Mrs. Hiring Manager. I talked to this individual, and let me add a little bit here. Now, I probably would have already physically added to the resume before I presented it, but let's say I didn't. Let's say we were in a pinch and this is a rock star person. I can just hear from the conversation when we chat. Yeah, I'll present it like this. I'll present it like this, and I'll you know, I'm gonna do that selling, so to speak, to the hiring manager. Hey, hiring manager, typically I clean these up a little bit, but look, this person is active on the market. They've got a final round tomorrow, but they like your role. They really want to chat with you. We need to look past this. Okay. This is what they did. And so if I can get you to tell me what you did at Coinbase, I can tell the hiring manager what you did at Coinbase. Similarly, right, for the hiring manager, if I can tell you, if I can tell the candidate what you need for the role, that's going to get the candidate more bought in. You know, sometimes hiring managers, maybe they want to gatekeep some information. The more information that I have as the recruiter, when I can talk to the candidate, the more prepared that they're going to be, the more you know, willing that they're going to, the more willing they are to make an educated decision on this opportunity. Is this something that I'm going to quit my job for? Is this something that I'm going to talk to my wife about? You know, is this something that we might move for? You know, that sort of thing.
Mhm.
Um, But yeah, so does this resume need some TLC? I'd say so. All of them do. Does this resume have the information that I'm looking for to reach out to this individual? Absolutely. Now, this is really important to note, Kevin, and I think that this is dictated by the fact that I am an agency recruiter. Um, the experience is really what is making me reach out to this individual,
Mhm.
right? Let's say that this were a boot camp graduate and these were all projects. As an agency recruiter, it would be a very tough sell for me to present this to a hiring manager. And the only reason that is like the way that we started this conversation is the driving force behind the agency recruiter is the requisition. You know what I mean? My customer, so to speak, has placed an order. They want the steak cooked a certain way. It's my job to go and then bring the steak back cooked that particular way, if that makes sense.
Mhm. Do you think, maybe he should remove some of those bottom companies and just really elaborate on, the top 3 or 4 and really go into detail, or should he keep like everything on there?
No, that's a really good point. So typically, generally, I'm looking for the last 5 years of experience or the last 2 to 3 positions. Now, some people have been at the same position for the last 5 years. I'm totally fine with that. List out your progression. So in this particular case, yeah, I would maybe go, because the stints have not been terribly long. I've been about a year. It could benefit them to maybe stop like right around here. And just like you're
Mhm.
saying, just add some more information, you know. But yeah, the last 5 years, and like let's think about that, logistically in the tech space, a lot can change within 5 years. A lot of technology can change within 5 years. You know what I mean? 5 years ago, there was probably a different front end technology that was dominating the market, other than JavaScript. Talking out of the side of my neck. I don't really know, but just those are some of like. There's a reason why I'm not really going back 10 years. You know what I mean? I don't need to know what you were
Mhm.
doing 10 years ago. I need to know that you've got relative experience. Um, yeah, relevant experience. Relative to the work that we're doing. So if it was 10 years ago. I'm going to ask like, hey, are you familiar with the developments that have been made in your industry? How are you keeping up? With the tech market. How are you staying abreast with uh, you know technology advancements, that sort of thing.
One of the reasons I also thought about removing some of the other ones because, like you mentioned, the stints are kind of short. So, you know, each one is about a year long. I think a lot of hiring managers will be like, hey, he's not necessarily going to stay here for that long. So he's changing companies too much.
So that's a great point that you bring up, Kevin. I'm glad you mentioned that. To me, I want to ask, but it is not a red flag to me. And if anything, it's potentially a green flag, because an
Okay.
individual like this, who I see in their first, after their first 3 careers, boom, they made the jump that they were looking for into the senior capacity. You know what I mean? Like this individual is probably hungry to learn new technologies.
Hmm.
You know what I mean? Like, let's say that this were all one place, and let's say that they were doing this for 15 years, right? And they were just let go. Let's say reduction in force, laid off. The company just disappeared that they were working at, right? For whatever reason, 15-year person finds himself on the job market. And they're working with antiquated technology, some legacy system that only they know how to work on. This individual here has had exposure to enterprise level organizations and has stood by work. At least, again, I want to know. I'm assuming that at the very least they ended October of 21. But yeah, like what sort of work did they stand up and stand next to here? What did they build there? And how many users saw that? Is there anything that they implemented that is still being used today? Um, but in any case, yeah, like basically what I see, the way that what it's telling me is like this individual is more than likely hungry to learn
Hmm.
multiple technologies, or they're hungry to work on maybe bigger projects. They're just looking for the next thing to add to their resume. So on the other end of that, I'm asking, where is that stuff at? You
Okay,
know,
got it.
yeah, I should see it on here. Like, okay, so in this role, this is what we were working with, and this is what I did. In this role, this is what we're working with, and this is what I did. That is going to tell me, like, okay, so look, I could see the technologies that they were using here. Boom, now they're using these technologies here. This individual, they were seeking that information out. To use myself as an example, if you look at my recruiting career, I started off in general staffing. I mentioned administration, customer service, and then honed in on finance and accounting, and then realize that there's a level above kind of recruiters that do technology recruiting. I was very interested in that, stepped into that role, and now I've stepped into a management capacity. But that's the sort of progression that would not make me concerned at all, and would actually then, as a hiring manager, or what I'm going to tell my client is, how are you going to keep this individual? What are you're going to have to make sure that they're working on new and exciting things relatively soon to keep this individual here. You like their experience, you like what they bring to the table. You need to consider how you can retain this employee. And so that's a little bit of the strategic consulting that we provide as recruiters as well. It's like, there's nothing wrong that this individual has jumped around. We didn't know their story. Again, to me, it's saying that they're just adding more to their repertoire, so to speak.
Okay, that's definitely a good point. Like, because I've had jobs, reject. Well, companies reject interviewing me because they say, "Oh, it looks like he's going from company to company too much." So it's good to hear the alternative perspective that it can also be sold as, somebody who's hungry, who needs new technologies. Um, so in terms of that typo there, how significant would something like this be, and how important is it to like make sure your resumes are typo free?
I mean, you definitely want to do your due diligence. That's also so that one of the benefits of working with a recruiter, Kevin, is that is typically something that I'll do. Before I submit the resume, I'm gonna edit it to make sure all the red and blue squigglies have gone away. I'll go through and I'll read the whole thing, right? While the initial screening process takes a very quick, like rinse and repeat, like, okay, I'm gonna look to see everything that I need. When I've made the decision that this resume is going to go in front of my client, I am also going to make sure that there are no errors. So
Mhm.
I would say that it should not be that big of a deal. Are there
Oh,
hiring managers that exist that say, if there are typos on this resume, I'm not going to read it? Sure. I would say also that those folks are farther and fewer in between. Generally, we're not looking for a professional resume writer.
mhm.
Again, I'm looking for the individual that can do the things that they say they can do on their resume.
Got it. So I noticed on, like, this resume, they're using a little more casual language. Is that's something that's acceptable, or should we be more formal when we're putting points on our resume?
So that's another good question too, Kevin, because I think the question there really is, how do you want to market yourself? Obviously everyone wants to feel as though they can be themselves in an organization. For me, um, anecdotally, I would say, yeah, the professional route is more than likely the safest route. But again, there are hiring managers out there that they do want to see who you are. They want to know who you are, and some of that can come through in the resume. If you keep the resume strictly professional, and then which will absolutely generate you a phone call or an interview, right? If you've got the experience that you do have, you're not embellishing that, and that's easily accessible. That's going to generate an interview or a phone call, and in that phone call, again, you can be yourself a little bit. You can maybe crack a joke, laugh at a joke. That'll come off in the conversation. The way that I look at it though is like, business is business. Like there's a time and a place for everything. And if your main concern is being seen by hiring managers as a professional and as competent, professionalism, that is a great default. You know what I mean? But yeah, so this is also acceptable though. Colloquial dialogue on the resume, I would say, is totally acceptable too. Kevin, you got me? Hello?
Oh, hello. Can you hear me?
I got you, man.
Okay. So yeah, for that resume, what they really needed to do, in your opinion, was flesh out the points more, like what they did at each company, how they use each technology.
Absolutely. And again, like they've got some big names on there. I saw Facebook on there. Like
Mm,
that's the sort of thing that is going to catch a recruiter's attention. They were a senior engineer at one of the big five. What were you doing there? Come on now.
hmm
You know, and also like when I'm interviewing, so I'm not very technical as a recruiter, right? How do I know when I've got like a solid candidate? Typically, a good interviewer is gonna make me do the least amount of work. I'm not. It's not like I'm pulling teeth. I'm like, well, can they are willingly giving me that information. Oh, I can hear the excitement in their voice while they were there. And maybe they left for not so great reasons, but they were excited to work on the stuff that they did and with the team that they worked on. You know, um, I'm trying to think if you've ever heard like someone who's just experienced something and they're just trying, they want you to get on board with it. You know what I mean? Like they won't stop talking about it. Like, man, you really like that thing. I can tell they are sold on it. That same thing comes across in an interview. It kills me when I hear someone, oh, I'm high energy.
Yeah.
I'm big performance. I bring a big energy. I'm like, you putting me to sleep on the phone right now. I don't know what energy you bring in, outside. You know what I'm saying? Like,
Yep.
that it should relate. It should relate. Someone like myself, um, if I say, yeah, I get excited easily, like I can tell, dude, you need to tone it down a little bit. So
So how important is the phone call? Like after you see their resume, you like it, you reach out to them. The conversation with you, how important is that when it comes to you presenting them to the client?
it's critical. It is critical, right. That conversation again, I'm making kind of a quick decision based on that conversation, but it should be. You should not gatekeep any information from the recruiter on that call. Your recruiter should let you know, like, hey, I'm your advocate. You can share things with me, maybe that you don't want to share with a hiring manager. Maybe that you were fired from your last job. That happens. You know what I mean? For one reason or another, we're not going to shy away from it. We're going to meet it head on. Okay. We're going to talk about. So maybe you were fired from your last position due to performance, due to whatever. That does not take away from the experience that you got while you were there. You know what I mean? Like, we need to talk about what you learned. Okay. And that's not totally a disqualifying thing, but again, your recruiter should be your advocate. So in that call, I'm going to hear things that, okay, we're going to tweak that a little bit. What we're going to say, instead of saying it that way, we're going to say it this way, or we're going to lead with this. We're going to leverage that information the most, because I also know the hiring manager. I know what the hiring manager is looking for. So when everyone is totally transparent like that, it just works for everybody. You know what I mean? When the client is not embellishing their job, when the recruiter is not embellishing the job, when the candidate is not embellishing their experience, but when everyone can kind of put the blinders down, the partitions, and say, hey, this is what it is. Is this what you're looking for? That's when we see the most success.
Absolutely. So like what are some of the things that candidates do to really impress you on the phone? And what are some of the things that they may do that kind of make you like, I don't know if I want to pass this down to the next level?
The biggest thing is your attitude with me. If you're getting upset with basic questions, right? Again, I'm not the most technical individual. I'm not going to be putting you through a code review, on that initial screening. We're not doing a carrot test or anything like that. I'm asking some very baseline questions to make sure that I can present you to my client, that you can represent me in that way. And if you have a poor attitude with me, it is, I mean, come on now. If I'm the person who's advocating for you, and if you cannot be gentle with me, you are absolutely not going to go through to my camp. I'm sorry, this is just not going to work. Not only are you not going to waste my time, I'm not going to waste your time, and I'm not going to waste my candidate's time. So that's kind of a big thing. A little bit of a red flag is when a candidate knows everything. You
Mm,
know what I mean? Oh, yeah, I've seen that before. I've got a ton of experience doing that, and it's like, this company is the only company doing this. How do you have experience doing that? You know what I mean?
yeah.
Um, it's and so also, it's okay in an interview to say, I don't know. or that I don't have experience with that, but I'm willing to learn. You know what I mean? That it's in hiring managers get a bit apprehensive. I get apprehensive when I hear someone who has never had a problem with anything before. You know what I mean? Like that they're just telling me that they're the perfect candidate. Oh, you got to hire me, man. You know,
Mhm.
it's I'm less apprehensive about the person who's honest about the things that they have and that they don't have. You know, I actually struggle with A, B, and C, which is also why I'm looking to get into a gig. I want to make those things stronger. You know what I mean? Um, I'd say probably those are the two biggest things: our attitude and then transparency with the candidate. If a candidate's not being transparent with me, you know, if they're making it difficult for us to do business together, you know, that's going to be a big deal too. Ultimately, the recruiting process with an agency should be the easiest. It isn't always, you know, but you know, if the candidate is also making that process a little bit difficult for us, you know, we want to be very cautious of both our time and the client's time.
Absolutely. That's all the questions I can think of. To the audience, did y'all have any more questions? If not, we can get to the closing thoughts. But where can people reach out to you at?
People can reach out to me on LinkedIn. I have got my personal information on there, my cell and my email. I make myself available, you know, for folks to get a hold of me. Um, that's mainly it. That's really the only social platform that I have for professional purposes.
Absolutely. So it looks like we don't have any more questions, man. I definitely appreciate you for stopping by. We'll have to get you on again. We do the little resume review shows. I think that would be a great one for you. Did you have any closing thoughts?
Um, uh, you know, I think it's important to note that you know, a good recruiter is looking to be your advocate. You know, I'll tell candidates sometimes that I can absolutely turn into a pit bull when I'm trying to fight for my candidates. You know, and that's one of the benefits of working with a recruiter. The job market it's a crazy place right now. I don't see it becoming any less crazy. Um, but with or without a recruiter, if you find yourself out there, know that you know mainly what we talked about today, the things that hiring managers are looking for are things that you already have, which is your experience, right? Leverage what you've got, and you're going to do just fine out there. You know, put your resume out there, even if it isn't perfect. Get you some market information, see what's working and what isn't. Find you a good recruiter, you know, and you know, stay positive. I know that it's very difficult when people are searching for jobs. And the other thing that I like to do is like kind of play like a professional hype man. You know, I like hyping people up. I like showing people the value that they're bringing to the table too. You know, when it is like a tough time, it's hard for you to see that. You know, it's kind of like getting hit in the head a little bit. You know, it's hard for you to focus on the right thing. But it can be done. Regardless of the market right now, there are a ton of hot opportunities. There are a ton of recruiters out there that are looking to help folks. And you know, just keep your head up out there. Keep working at it, and continue learning, folks. That's all I got.
Absolutely, man. We definitely appreciate you for stopping by. And I'd like to thank the audience for tuning in. We'll catch y'all next time. Peace.
Kevin, I appreciate it, man. You take care.
You same